Hey, are you wondering what the best lists to pull are for getting motivated sellers and having trouble figuring it out? This is what we're going to talk about at the top of this meeting here, how to pull the best lists for wholesaling and maximize your returns and leads from that. So I'm here with my son, Jasper Cool, and I'm Mark Cool. We have two real estate wholesaling businesses that we operate in North Carolina, and we're going to talk about list pulling and also break down some deals and talk about KPIs and victories and challenges and some other things. So let's get right into it. Jasper, I figured maybe today, since we're talking about list pulling, I could have you discuss houses since you specialize in houses, and then I can chat about land a little bit. So
Yeah,
would you mind sharing what lists are working best for you or historically have worked best for you, what's working now, and what your top parameters for pulling lists are,
yeah, definitely,
and anything else you can think of to share on the topic.
definitely. Um, so yeah, historically, I've really only used four providers really for lists. In bulk, I've always sampled here and there with other providers, but I've kind of come back to these main four over and over again. So just going to share on what I'm actually using and not in theory. So
Yeah.
The first one, the primary one that I use is Direct Skip. We've talked about that on the show before. Second, List Source, PropWire, and Skipify. So those are the four providers I use. Three of those are paid, and PropWire is free. And that's for the data only. And then you obviously have to pay for phone numbers. But just in terms of list pulling, I think it just depends on what your goal is. So obviously, this is a wholesaling podcast. So if you
Yeah.
were pulling a list for creative finance or sub two or something else, you might want to use different parameters, but these work well for getting wholesale type deals, people that are interested in getting cash offers and potentially selling, a little bit below market. So you can make a spread there. So I'll just break down, I guess, a couple from each source real quick. And then if anyone wants more information, feel free to drop a comment. We can go maybe more in depth in a future episode. But for direct
That's
skip,
good.
I'll just break down my favorite three lists with them. So first one is called hidden equity list. And one nice thing that I like about direct skip actually is when you go on there, if you sign up for an account, which is free, you can go on there and they have these what they call like saved lists or whatever. So they have pre-built criteria for you. So if you've never pulled a list before, they make it super easy for you. You can just choose one of their buttons, click one button, it fills in all the criteria that they think works, and then you can just plug in the city or county or zip code or whatever. So some of those lists are actually good, and one of them that I learned from them is called this hidden equity list. And so I think this is very similar to just their pre-built thing, but I'll just share exactly the criteria I use for that. So another cool thing about them is that when you build out your own filters that you like, you can save it to your profile. So you also can have your own one-click list where, like, if you have a high equity list, for example, you can click a button and it'll apply it automatically. So you don't have to do all these filters every single time. So it saves you some time. But yeah, so this hidden equity list, I just clicked their button to start. And what they classify as hidden equity is related to the mortgage recording date, which is kind of cool. A lot of list providers don't even provide that as like a thing that you can toggle with. So that's pretty cool. And so what they do
Yeah.
here is they do a mortgage recording date prior to 2008. And so that's their criteria for this for whatever reason. I guess they call it hidden equity, but I don't really know the science behind it, but it has been working for us. So we do that filter, which is mortgage recording before 2008. And then we like to do years owned greater or equal to 20. So that means these people have owned the property for 20 or more years. And then for property type, we typically just do everything as it relates to like property, not vacant land, but everything else. So that just means single family, duplex, triplex, quad, mobile home, townhome, pretty much everything. We don't do commercial properties, we don't do vacant land, and we don't do like all the other stuff. There's a bunch of other stuff you can do, but we just do all the residential properties.
So 20 years, that's quite a ways to go back
I
for
know.
ownership. So you're just
Yeah.
looking for, you're trying to specifically target tired landlords a lot with that, right? Because
Yeah.
then you're at the point where somebody's bought a bunch of properties and then they're at the end of their investing career and they're just wanting to liquidate their properties and not deal with it anymore, right?
Mhm. Exactly. And another thing that I'll share, like with these lists, kind of depending on what your budget might be or what your team might look like, you can obviously change these filters to get the list smaller or bigger. And so with this list, it ends up being kind of like a niche list. It's not like a tiny list because these are the only filters that we do is the ones I mentioned. We also add not listed. We add that on every single list, make sure it's not listed on the MLS. But for this specific list,
Yeah.
those are the only filters we use. And so I would say it's like a mid-sized list. We probably get a few thousand per county when we pull this list. So that's pretty good. And then yeah, we typically when we're pulling this list, we'll just leave the owner thing like blank. And so this will target owner occupants or non-owner occupants. But if you want to narrow it down further, you could definitely choose one or the other. But that's that one. And so I'll just try to run through these so I don't go too long. But the second one I like is called old equity, or that's what I call it, old equity. And so it's kind of the same thing, but even older. And so these are people that have owned the property even longer. And typically, when you're doing these lists, like the longer someone's owned it, just like you said, the more motivated they might be. You know, things go wrong maybe in their life, at the property, or whatever. So the longer time that someone owns an investment, a lot of times, they're kind of ready to get rid of it, especially
Yeah,
if,
or they're just ready to move to Florida and not think about rental
yeah,
properties and management companies and any of that stuff.
yeah, yeah. And you gotta kind of think in the mind, or I guess like I don't want to say like a life cycle, but you got to kind of think in terms of like people's lives. So a lot of times people work, their jobs, they save up their money, and when they get maybe in the 30 to 40 age range, they start buying investments. And so if you think about that, after they've owned an investment for 20 or 30 years, if they're buying in that age range, these people are 60, 65 retirement age. And so they are looking to do exactly what you said. They're looking to move to Florida or somewhere nice. They're looking to sell out their investments, and they're looking to live out, their golden years. So you got to kind of think about that. And, after being in business in a while, you'll realize that most of the sellers we work with are kind of in that age range. They're kind of 55, 65 years old in that age range, sometimes even older.
Yeah.
So a lot of your deals are going to come from those people just because that's just kind of the way life works. You buy investments, you get income, and then you want to cash out when you're ready to retire. So this second list I found has worked really well for capitalizing on that kind of scenario. And so we do the same thing, with the properties. So I'll just skip through that. And then second is we do sale price for this one, and we do less than or equal to $100,000. Now, what that means is that when they bought the property, they bought it for 100,000 or
Mm,
less. And then we combine that with a sale date on or before the year 2000. So that means that these people bought a property fairly cheap, under 100,000, and they bought it before 2000. And so now, the time of recording, that's about 25 years ago. And so that means that they bought this property cheap, which means they likely have it already paid off free and clear, just without
yeah.
using that filter. We're not using a direct equity filter, but it's likely implied at that point. And then the sale date again before 2000. And then we also do on most of our lists, actually, I do this, but we also do assessed total value. So not like the Zillow value or whatever, but actually tax assessed value of 300,000 or less, because typically we're not going after luxury properties. And so
Yeah.
I like to throw that in there because if you don't, you'll end up getting a lot of leads on your lists that are like 700, 800, $900,000 homes. And we just don't work with those at least in my business. Maybe if you're in California, New York or something, you might work with those. But in our state, those homes don't usually work for, kind of wholesale deals.
I think it goes to the median, right? Like you want to be
Yeah.
around the median home sales price in your market. So rather than a number, look at your median home sales price and be around that. Because if you get
Hmm.
way above that, those properties move more slowly. And if
Yeah.
you're in the business of trying to move properties fairly quickly, you want to be in that median if you can.
Yeah, that's great advice. So yeah, so that's it for this list. And again, I do the not listed filter on every list, so that's included. But just those two or three filters are the main ones. So sale price, sale date, and then assessed value. And then the last one that I do is just a general equity list. I mean, you'll hear this from most people, but this list does work, time and time again. So on this one, we're doing a direct equity filter rather than kind of like the workaround way I mentioned on the last list. And so this one we do years owned of 10 or more. So we're not doing a super long time of ownership, but at least 10. That gives people time to actually build up that equity. So we're doing that. We're doing the same property thing I already mentioned. And then we're doing on this list, we're doing 20% equity or more. And then same thing for the value and the listing status. So on this one, basically the main two filters are the years owned and the equity percentage. And that's pretty much it for that one. So uh,
Nice.
yeah, but that's fairly similar to my other lists. I mean, how are we doing on time? I can break down my list that I like from those other providers too.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to run through them quickly, sure. I think this is the topic is people want to know which list to pull, and so I think it's helpful.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll just run through it with the exact, like these are exact filters I use. So if you're not understanding the words I'm using or whatever, if you go into these actual platforms, you'll see the exact words that I'm using. So
Yeah.
those first three were with direct skip and
So some platforms are using different terms to describe the same things too,
yeah,
right? And that can trip you up. So You just have to have a flexible mind and go like, well, on PropStream, they call it this, on PropWire, they call it that.
Yeah.
There might be a few terms that are slightly different, but they mean the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the main ones we're probably doing in any of these lists is property type, and that's going to be called property type on most of these places. And then equity, that might be called something different, but equity percentage. And then the sale date, typically we're working with when the sale date or the years of ownership, one or the other. We're typically working with one of those. And that's pretty much it. And then, yeah, obviously the location, so like county, city, zip code. But yeah, so I'll just run through these other lists for
Owner
list source
type
that I like.
also,
What's
right?
that?
Did you say owner type? Like
Oh yeah, owner type. Yeah,
we want to get rid of LLCs and stuff like that. And
yeah.
some platforms will have like what probate, things like that, types of
Mhm.
ownership. So normally, I think both of us are probably just going for individual owners in
Yeah,
general, and not any other entities or types of owners.
yeah, definitely. Um, so yeah, so for this, I'll just break down the same thing, three lists that I like from list source. First one, these are just the names that I name them, but you can name it whatever you want. But I call this one the no data list. So it's just kind of because, oh, you'll see why, but I call it the no data list. So I just start with the geography. So you can do county, city, zip code, however big you want to pull a list. We typically pull by county these days. And then we do unknown equity. So one thing I really like about list source, like DirectSkip calls it hidden equity. List source has a filter that it says unknown for equity type. So I like using that for list source because it's just different than other providers. So we choose unknown equity when you go to the equity percentage. We choose unknown sale price, and then we choose all the property types. And that's it. And so we're doing unknown equity and unknown sale price. And what you get with this list is you typically get interfamily transfers or stuff where the data might have gotten lost. And
Mhm.
another benefit is most people, like I just shared, are pulling that list with equity and they're pulling the years of ownership and all this stuff. So you get all the leads that aren't on those lists when you're doing this because
Mm.
there's unknown equity, so they're not showing up on those lists, and there's an unknown sale price, so they're not showing up on those lists. So you get a lot of leads that you might not otherwise get. And this is very helpful for people that are marketing in the same counties, like you and I are, because you'll get a lot of those leads, like I just said, that you're not getting from these other lists that you're commonly pulling. So I don't remember where I heard this list from. I might have just played around and found it, but it definitely works well, especially if you're hitting the same counties over and over. If you've never tried it, that's a good one to get a lot of people that you might not have talked to before.
Cool.
So that's
That's
it.
it.
Super simple. We just do those two filters, and then yeah, we do a property types in the counties, obviously, but yeah, that's it for that one. And then for the next one, we do from list source, we also do the same thing. So just an equity list, basically the same thing I just went over with direct skip. It's just slightly different with the filters on list source, the way they look, but I won't go over that. It's basically the same exact thing. And then for the third list that I like from them is just the unknown equity. So in this case, it's a little bit different than the one I just went over. So we'll do the county and then we'll choose unknown equity. And then we'll choose a range for years of ownership. Instead of doing the unknown sale price, we'll do unknown equity coupled with usually 10 years or more of ownership. So that's the third list we like. But that's pretty much it for list source. Those are the three lists that we like. So the first and third, I can't get from any other source. So that's why I really like it. And then the equity list, I still like to pull from list source just to kind of compare and contrast against direct skip. So that is that one. And then for PropWire, I think I've shared this before, but the main purpose I use that for is pulling our what we call our neighborhood list, which is
Yeah.
basically the time we close a deal, we draw a big circle around the area and we pull all that data. And so really I don't use that for bulk pulling, but basically all the lists I just mentioned, you can create on there. It's just going to look a little bit differently, but we just find that the paid data is better for us. So we just work with the paid data sources, but we do use that neighborhood list on that one. And
Yeah, if you're on a low budget, PropWire is great because it's free and you will get deals from it. We've talked about this on prior episodes, but people are like, well, can you get deals? Because everybody's saying that the paid lists are better. And I think you probably get a higher conversion rate with paid lists, but it doesn't mean you're not doing deals with free lists like PropWire and PropStream.
mhm.
Even though PropStream is not a free platform, the data is older like PropWire.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, so basically for PropWire, my recommendation is just to, rewind a little bit, take the list that I just went over and just plug those in all on that. And you can probably come up with the same list, but it'll be free. So that'll save you some money. And so then for Skipify, the last one, the main list that I actually like from them is just one list, so I don't have three for them. But Matt Larson came out with it, and it's called a pre foreclosure list, and
Oh
actually
yeah.
yeah, it worked really well for us. So we like Skipify for that because I haven't found it on any other provider. But basically, what this list is it's people that have missed payment yet, or sorry, they have not missed a payment yet, but they have some sort of algorithm or whatever that I guess tracks people's income or credit ratio or whatever stuff that tracks that stuff, and their algorithm thinks that these people are going to go into foreclosure within the next couple months, and so for whatever reason, it ends up being fairly accurate. And so we buy that list from them, and we do have a lot of good conversations with homeowners that are like, it's almost like a how did you know? Like obviously they're not going to say that to us, but it's almost like when you call these people, they're like they kind of are thinking about selling already because they might be in some sort of distress. So
Yeah.
that list is definitely working well for us. And I pretty much it's the same thing as direct skip in there. You can click on this list. I think they call it within the thing called propensity list, but you can
Mhm.
click on the predefined filter and it'll pretty much populate everything for you in there if you sign up for their thing. But with Skipify, you do have to sign up for a monthly plan, I believe, to get
Yeah.
access to their stuff. So just wanted to
Yeah.
mention that.
It's a subscription thing for sure. It's
Yeah.
probably it's pricier than direct skip.
Hmm.
If you're budget conscious right now, then Prop Wire would be the first place to go because it's free, and then probably Direct Skip would be the next tier. I think List
Hmm.
Source is similar, but I haven't really used List Source. It's similar to Direct Skip in cost, right?
It's more expensive. So
A
I would
little
say
bit more.
ListSource and Skipify are about the same in terms of cost.
Oh, okay.
Because with ListSource, you do have to pay per record and they charge 3 cents. So it does add up. It's a bit
Oh,
expensive.
yeah. Yeah.
But there's no monthly with them. So that's good. But yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, so that's pretty much it for me. And then I'll turn it over to you. Hopefully that was helpful.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, that's really awesome data for anybody who's still trying to figure out how to pull lists for houses. And that's, you know, if that's what you're looking for, then just bookmark this and and go through and
Yeah.
use what Jasper just shared because it'll give you a leg up on people who are not being organized about their lists, or you're just getting right there 7 or 8 years of
Mhm.
experience in pulling lists
Yeah.
in a nutshell. So thank you, Jasper.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. For us, I'm gonna cover the land. As we mentioned before, we do some houses, but much more land historically. So, and Jasper's got the house thing really well covered. So, as far as platforms, um, mainly we use Direct Skip, which is one Jasper already mentioned. We find the data there is really good. The cost is great. They have bulk discounts if you're buying a lot of skip traces. So we like it a lot. And then we also have a Skipify account, and we do have a pro account on Skipify. When you buy an account on Skipify, you do get included, listings and skips with that account. So we found it cost effective for us because of the volume we do a Skipify paid account. So we use Skipify and Direct Skip primarily. We do a little bit on PropWire, similar to what Jasper does. We do some what we call Jasper calls neighborhood lists. We call guerrilla campaigns, but we're just going in and trying to pull neighborhoods where we know we have a buyer who's buying a lot of properties right now, or looking for a lot of properties in that area, or an area where we just closed a couple of deals and we want to continue to double down. So I definitely recommend PropWire for free data. It's the user interface is great. Prop stream we also have. We don't really use it much anymore, and it's kind of sad because we pay for a monthly subscription and they have 10,000 free listings you can pull, but we just don't respect the data much anymore because and again, it goes back to, if you have prop stream, pull your list there, because if you're on a low budget you will get deals. But now that we've started spending more money and we have a bigger budget, we tend to go with Direct Skip or Skipify, but you will get deals from PropStream if you've already subscribed to the account. So don't let me discourage you. But we find, and it's the opinion of other investors too, that data is older, and you'll have a drop off in your results by using that data as opposed to one of these other platforms. So other than that, as far as land is a little bit simpler than houses. When I listen to you talk, Jasper, about the parameters you're pulling, because we're really just going in. We're not worrying about equity on land because almost every vacant lot is paid off. Like, you don't run
Yeah.
into a lot of vacant lots that have equity or no equity or low equity or this or that. So, really, our parameters are more just trying to figure out what's going to sell fairly quickly for a profit that we want to sell it for. So we want to be in urban areas or adjacent to urban areas. We want to be around in a like there. If you look at a major market, like a major city in your market, then there's sort of rings of population that go out from that, right? So you're going to sell those infill lots probably within the metropolitan area fastest, and then there's a
Mhm.
ring of suburbia where those will also probably move pretty quickly, and then you start to get more rural, and it's maybe a little bit harder to find buyers out there, and then you get way out in the country, and it's more difficult. And I think that applies to houses too. When you get way out in the country and you have a house, not everybody wants that. Some people do, but you're going to move things faster the closer you are to the metropolitan area. So we do that a little bit by zip codes, and we do it a little bit by um, just picking our metropolitan areas. But we're starting to filter that more and more. But then other than that, we find a really big parameter that works very well for us with land is choosing out of state and out of county as filters. If you have uh, owners who are not local to the property, they tend to be less attached to the property in general. They either bought the property years ago and then moved away and they were intending to build on it, but then they changed their mind or their lives changed. And so there's a property sitting there they're paying taxes on, or maybe they're paying somebody to mow it or whatever, and they're just ready to let it go. Or sometimes those out of state and out of county people are people who have inherited the property from a relative and they've never seen it or never been there, or they were there once when they were a kid and it doesn't mean much to them generally, and they just want the money out of it rather than thinking about a property over there, or they could use the money from it. So we use those two as our kind of our top two filters to start with because we get our best results there. And then other than that, we talked about the type of owner that you want. Generally, we're just going with individuals. We're not marketing to LLCs or doing other filters with probate or different types of things like that. So just choose individual owners. And then as far as size, I think this is important with land to choose the size of lot you want to work with because similar to the sort of rings around a metropolitan area, when you get into larger parcels, then it gets a little bit more complicated sometimes with land too, with pricing, with comping, with the type of use that land can have, or we just find that if we keep things under 10 acres, we're usually better off, and even under 5 acres. And then you also have to look at your minimum lot size. And if you have familiarity with your metropolitan area, there's going to be a minimum lot size to build in that area. So you can weed out some of your properties and not waste your money if your minimum lot size to build in the area you're marketing to is say 0.12 acres, then you want to set that as your lowest size, and then you can go up from there. But I would max it out at probably, if you're starting out, just max it out at 5 acres or 4 acres or something, and keep it to basically building lots. And those bigger lots, if you're just going to the main metropolitan area, then really you could go like the minimum lot size up to 1 acre because you're not going to have big lots in an urban area. But if you're going to go into the rings outside of the metropolitan area, then you could go up to like 4 or 5 acres probably, and still it would be a building site. And some of those areas, we don't want to get too far down the road with perk testing and all that stuff in soil, but sometimes you might need a 4 acre lot in the country to be able to put one house on it. So, yeah, that's the size stuff. And then I sort of spoke to the rural and urban aspect and what you want to do. Like if you have enough lots in a sample size that are what they call infill lots, which is an urban lot, ready to build with water and sewer, um, accessible, then you might just want to focus on that rather than going out into those wider rings of from the metropolitan area. Um, and then we stay away from commercial properties. So we're really just going vacant land, and then we're going residential, right? We don't want commercial or industrial or any of that stuff. So you want to just take residential vacant land. And then Jasper mentioned MLS earlier, but we don't want anything on the MLS. So I think most of these platforms have an MLS selection where you can select on the MLS or no MLS. It might be worded differently depending on the platform you're pulling from. Um, I guess an exception to that would be though if you have failed MLS listings, right? If you can filter for failed MLS, that's always a good one for any list, right? Because often people who have put a property on the MLS and then it has not sold will be frustrated and impatient and ready to sell it, and they might take a lower price below market to just move it. So that's a good one. And then we talked about this in the house discussion too, but you do tend to, I think, even with vacant land, you also skew demographically toward older people. You get people who are retiring and liquidating their assets, or putting their affairs in order. Even you get elderly people who are 70, 80, and they're just like, yeah, I'm getting my affairs in order, and I've got to figure out who's going to get this property when I die, or if I'm just going to sell it and um, give the money to my kids and grandkids, right? So sometimes if you can actually pull a list, and I'm not sure on platforms which ones you can filter by age, but I know we've pulled lists where you can filter by us by age of the seller, 60 plus or whatever, and we've done that. And I think that's in a nutshell, what we're doing with vacant land. I don't know. Did I miss anything, Jasper? Any questions on that?
No, no, it sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's just the roundup of the basics. I think, out of state, out of county, and individuals, and then getting your size dialed in, and then just deciding which types of lots you're going for, and which aprons of the metropolitan area you want to be in. And yeah, that's basically it. I don't have any set lists other than we just pull those parameters for the most part. I mean, we've done other stuff you can do, all these sites have little niche things you can do, like some of these sites will have divorce or probate or different things like that if you want to get into those. But I think this episode we're just talking about the streamlined basics of what you want to pull to get good results, and that's what that is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did
So,
you did you mention, are you guys pulling only residential? Do you pull multiple varieties of vacant land, or is it just residential vacant land that you pull?
well, we do residential, but in the country, if you're going to go rural, outside of the metropolitan area or the main city, if you are on those aprons that are outside of the city limits, then residential agricultural can be very good, because the the parameters for what you can put on that land are different. So you might find buyers for vacant land who are looking to put a mobile home or a barn dominium, if you've ever heard of a barn dominium, or things like that.
Hmm.
So you can include the residential agricultural, and that can be a good one for if you're targeting a rural area, or if a rural area is included in your list that you're pulling. If you've got a county that you want to pull the entire county and you've got urban plus rural, then
Yeah.
I'd go up to like 5 acres, unless you want to do big acreage. I would just say my experience of larger acreage is that it takes longer to move, it's harder to comp, and if you're gonna put properties under contract that are 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres, whatever, you're going to want a longer time horizon for that contract. And, it's just, you got to work a little bit harder to get the comping right. But anyway, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to digress from what you were asking. The agricultural is good. Residential and agricultural, we find, because the agricultural will allow you to, if you've got buyers who want to have horses or goats or chickens or whatever, plus generally in those agricultural zoning things, you can put a mobile home, which you can't often do in an urban setting.
Hmm.
That's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. Unless I have any other questions about the land stuff, Jasper, I missed anything.
Yeah, no, that was the main thing that stood out, is if you're just pulling all the land or if there's just a specific types. So
Yeah, residential if you're just doing urban, and then add the agricultural if you're doing the country, but leave out the commercial and stuff. And then the other thing about lists is that, if you pull a list, I'm not sure if you can filter this on the platforms, but we filter it afterward. Sometimes sometimes you get government stuff. Like if you can look at your list and filter by the seller name, sometimes you'll get like US government this, or here in North Carolina, we'll get NC Department of Transportation, NCDOT, things like that. Like if you can filter that while you're pulling your list, that's really good, because you don't want to be wasting your time sending mail or texting or calling the NCDOT or the US Department of whatever. Like there are all those, if you just look your state initials and then US, filter your seller name, and then just scan through and see if there are any government entities and pull those out of there. That's
hmm.
another thing that just can be a waste of time and money. And you
Yeah.
find that in land, I think, much more than you find on house lists. All right, so let's segue into the week in business, and we're going to share some stuff about our businesses. So we have two different real estate wholesaling businesses, And generally, we talk about any significant KPIs for the week, victories and challenges from the trenches, just stuff that we've run into in the week, real life stuff. And then we'll break down a deal or two. And yeah, Jasper, are you up for recapping your week in business?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. And I'm going to skip out of the screen and grab my charger because my battery's showing low. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. Can edit that out if we need to. Yeah, so go ahead and jump in and let us know about your week in business, Jasper.
All right. I guess I'll just start with KPIs and then yeah. All right. So for this week, we got 2 contracts signed. We got three deals sold, and we
Nice.
closed on 3 deals as well. So yeah,
Wow.
good week this week. And yeah, I guess it's just my KPIs, and then I'll go into victories and challenges. Challenges, I sold 3 deals this week to New Western, and I probably shouldn't have done that.
Oh, wow.
I think on 2 of those deals, it was the right move to make. And I think I just got excited and caught up talking to my rep, who's also my friend at New Western. And I think I just made a mistake on the 3rd one. But anyways, for those people listening, we've talked about them before. It's a great resource to have, I think, as kind of a last resort. If you are not getting the offers you thought, or maybe just not the interest you thought, or maybe 0 offers at all, I think it's a great resource to work with a company like New Western. I think they're the only company right now like them, but they basically are just a nationwide buyers list essentially, and that's all they do is focus on buyers. So usually they can sell your property for more than you can. And so anyways, this week we had 2 properties, which that was a situation on, we've been marketing them, I've been marketing them, and I was getting offers, but just not at my asking price. And I really thought, they were worth my asking price. And so I ended up selling both of those to New Western. And like I said, I think that was the right move. And then I ended up selling a 3rd one to them. And I don't think I should have done that, but that's okay. It was still good to sell 3 deals this week, and got a couple more that I'm going to get working on next week. So that's good. And then yeah, the contracts, that was a victory for us. Even still this morning while we're talking, something happened, I guess. I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about it later in our episode, but I think that might have something to do with it. But there's been some news surrounding North Carolina wholesaling, and I've noticed a shift this week, and I think a lot of people might be maybe leaving already. And we've gotten more online leads this week than I've gotten all year. And
Wow.
so maybe all year in total, but just this week we've gotten over 30 online leads. And typically within a month, from all of our online lead sources combined, we might get 20. And so in one week we've
Are you talking
gotten,
about PPC and SEO?
yeah, so I mean, SEO, I don't get any leads from, but this is PPC and PPL combined this week. So I do, pay per lead and PPC, but just this week, and I think that count is even higher if I count yesterday and today, but we've had over 30 online leads this week. And like I said, we usually don't get that close to that in an entire month. And so that's been, a good thing, but also kind of a struggle because we're getting a bunch of these leads on the weekend. And so thankfully, one of my guys is transitioning to working a half day Saturday, but I might need to have someone working on Sunday too. So we'll see. But that's been, exciting because I'm getting a lot more leads. And if that's the way that it's going to continue, that's kind of exciting. If we're going to get that many leads every week from these sources, that's cool. So I definitely need to probably hire some more help soon. But anyways, we got a contract from one of those already. And that contract was within like 2 hours. We got the lead, they spoke to them immediately, and then a little bit of follow-up they had to discuss with their wife, and we contracted that within, like I said, 3 hours of them coming in our system. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's always nice. And so yeah, we've gotten some more good leads. Like these are not all trash leads. Obviously you get a handful of trash leads that are coming online, but most of these are legitimate leads. And so yeah, that's exciting. That's been a victory, but also, like I said, kind of a challenge because it's just been a lot more volume than we're used to with that lead source. So yeah, there's that. And then challenges we're going to touch on later in the episode. That's been a big challenge, just kind of thinking through what we're going to do and how the landscape might change within the market that we work in currently, both of us. Yeah, so that's been a challenge. And then otherwise, just the normal challenges. I don't think I have anything major besides that this week, but definitely been dealing with some attorney challenges and stuff. We did have another one this week that we got price reduction on, so that's always a victory. And I've noticed specifically one person on my team used this thing that Matt taught them, which is just using kind of current events to help them negotiate. And so Zillow just published a report, and Zillow is not always the most accurate source, as we know, but sellers think they are. And so you can use that to your advantage because sellers think that this estimate is the gospel and they think everything Zillow puts out there is true. And so one thing that Matt trained, two of my people are from him. One thing he trained them on this week is using that to your advantage because they just published a report that this year in particular, like hundreds, they published a full list, but they were like hundreds of these markets are going to decline this year in real estate value. And so, we're on the list. And so my acquisition team used that to their advantage to, follow up with people this week, but also to secure a price reduction on one of these deals we needed to. And it was pretty much like a smooth sale. When they mentioned that to them, the person like understood. We have a link to the article that we can share with them, and it's like it works really well. So just using that to your advantage, I wanted to mention that to people. Just staying up on current events, and we are kind of in a turbulent time right now with the stock market and the real estate market and all kinds of things. And so
Yeah.
just using that to not like fear monger anyone, but just to remind them of what's going on and that the market might get worse before it gets better. So I think that could help us get some more deals and better deals. So just wanted to share that
Yeah,
with
that's a good
people.
point.
Um, but yeah, so I'll just jump into deal breakdown. For this week, I think I'll do something a little bit differently because this is a little bit of a different deal for me. So hopefully people like that. So I'm just going to dive into this one that I did like a light flip on, or some people might call it a wholesale deal. So I'm just going to jump on a breakdown on that, and it'll be a little bit different than some of my past ones. But I'll do it from start to finish. So from the time that we got the contract and all the way to the closing. So we got this lead a long time ago. Let me check exactly. We got this lead. Not too long, December 24th. So not too long ago, December of 2024, we got this one, and we went under contract in February. So pretty quick turnaround, about 60 days or so. And then we closed in March. So the closing, everything was pretty easy. No crazy stories to share there. But we did close on this one ourselves, and my plan was just to do a light flip on it and put it back on the market. And so to do that, I just want to share with people in case it might be helpful, but I don't do that often. And so I don't have a huge Rolodex of contractors. I was able to build up a decent, network just from doing this deal. And so that was cool. But basically what I just did is use Facebook groups. And so I just went on Facebook before I closed, and I just posted like, hey, I'm going to need this, this, and this in this location, and who can help me? And I just got a flood of people DMing me. And so it was awesome.
Nice.
And so then I just, reached out to all these people, kind of compared quotes with them. And what I did to get the quotes is just send them the picture of the property because it shows everything. And so one thing I learned is that a lot of these people were like trying to go out to the property and do their quote. And I feel like for the stuff that I was asking for, pressure washing, the deck, doing new windows, like stuff like that, I feel like you should be able to quote that just based on pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I kind of weeded out a lot of people just through that way. They were like, oh, well, I have to see the house to give you a quote. And I was like, okay, well, you're probably not someone I want to work with in the future anyways. And so most people, I would say, were willing to give me a quote. And so I just kind of compared. I think I got like 4 or 5 quotes, and I just kind of compared and chose the best one. And I think he was slightly higher than my second best one, but he was available fastest. So he was like ready to knock it out as soon as I closed. So I went with this dude. And it was nice too, because he's like a full service guy. He also has a GC license. So, that's a benefit and stuff. And so on this property, what I did is I did landscaping, I did pressure washing on the outside. I thought I was going to have to replace the deck, but he actually had like a chemical wash or something that really restored the wood, made it pop again. So that was awesome. That saved me some
Nice.
money. And so he pressure washed everything, pressure washed the deck, the brick, the siding, everything like that. And then the sidewalks and everything like that. We landscaped it, which that was probably like the biggest job. There were just trees and stuff everywhere. And then we had to do junk removal on it, which this house had like a shed, which is full of crap. And then it had a house, which is full of stuff. And so the junk removal literally took 3 full days. So that was a huge job. And
It's
so
expensive too.
yeah, it was. And so that was more than we thought. I didn't think it was going to take that much. And this was after the seller like cleared out some stuff. This is not all the way a hoarder house, but it was kind of close to it. And so there's a lot of stuff in there. Anyway, so we did the junk removal landscaping on day 1, and then it kind of bled over to multiple days. But the good thing is the junk removal guy, I've worked with him before. And so on day 1, he got everything out of the house. And so he didn't get everything to the dump. but he got everything out of the house on day one so they could go ahead and paint day two. Because I really wanted to turn this as fast as I could. And
Yeah.
so kudos to him for that. So he put everything like over by the shed because he had to clear that out anyways. And he took as much as he could to the dump on day one, and he came back, like I said, a couple more times. And then we got landscaping all set up on day one, which was just clearing out all the trees that were like trees were blocking the house. They were up so tall that you couldn't see like even the front of the house. And
Yeah.
so trimmed all those down, made it look like so much better just after that. Mowed the whole lawn and then cleared all the trees that were like on the side of the house. Because same thing, they were almost like touching the side of the house. It's kind of
Mhm.
like that. Um, and this one was on almost an acre of land in Mebane. And so what he did with all the extra stuff is he just put it in like the back, where is like the nature area anyway. So it saved him a trip to the dump. So that was good. And then the next day we hit it with paint. So we just wanted to make it kind of like a clean slate for the buyers. Didn't want to do a full flip, but wanted to make it look presentable. And so I just went with like a off-white color, painted the entire house off-white. And then I think that's all we did inside because it was in decent shape, like it wasn't a terrible house. So yeah, we just painted it inside and then replaced a couple windows on it, and I think that's about it. So that all in all, I think that took like 4 or 5 days, all that work. So it was a pretty quick turn. And then we just got professional photos. I did use a company called Home Jab. I've used them before, but they're great if no one's ever heard of them. If you want professional photos, they're great. And I also really like that they do drone shots. I think that really helps sell properties. So
Yeah.
they do professional photos, they do editing for you, and they do drone shots and they do drone video if you want it. So what I did with them is I did the drone photos, I did all the professional photos, and they have this cool thing that edits your property, at least like the cover photo, to make it look like it's sunset because for whatever reason people like that. Buyers when they're on Zillow, like you see the sunset and you click on it. And so I did that. That was like $20, but I think it made it like pop even more. And so then we just did that, and then we used a flat fee brokerage and just listed it on the market. And we were just offering, standard 2.5% to buyer's agent, and it sold pretty quick. I think we went under contract 5 or 6 days on the market, so it sold pretty quick.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, and then they were just coming in conventional loan, typical retail buyer, and so that presented a few challenges, but they went under contract with us. We got due diligence and all that stuff, and I guess just a quick tip for anyone who's new, but if you list a property on the market with a retail buyer, don't accept earnest money. Always push for due diligence because you actually get to keep that if they back out. Earnest money is not, this pretty much doesn't mean anything. And so I just went for full DD. Some people like earnest money and due diligence. I don't really care,
Yeah.
like I said. So I just went for 100% due diligence, sent it directly to me, and they did. So that was good, but always recommend doing that. And then yeah, then they did their inspection. They found termites. That sucked. And so then obviously when you're on the retail market, that's just the name of the game. Like they're going to do their inspection and they're going to come back to you for a price drop every single
Yeah.
time, regardless.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do every single time. But in this case, I can understand, termites I didn't know about, and I
Did you
did
get
I
photos
agreed to
of it?
fix
Was
that
it
for them.
was it really bad, or did you get photos of the termite damage?
Yeah, they kudos to this agent. Like I worked with some real estate agents who were very difficult to work with. This agent was not like that. They were great. They shared with me the full inspection report, photos, all this stuff. So like it was, it's not like they were trying to BS me. So I appreciate that. And so, I checked it out, and they also got a quote for me, which I appreciate too. So they got a quote from like a local termite guy or whatever, and they were basically asking for like me to pay for that and like all these concessions on top of that. So I was like, well, I'm not doing that, but I'll cover the termites, and I think I gave them like 2,000 or something additional for something else that they asked for or whatever. But so the termites was a big job. I didn't know it cost that much. That was like $10,000 I had to pay them. And what they did is they remedied all the termite damage. There was like mold damage in the crawl space and stuff on the joist. And so they remedied all that. They put in a few new joists that were kind of damaged by the termites. And then they put down an all new vapor barrier and did a few other things. And so there was that. And then I also had like a plumbing issue inside. There was a rot and a leak on the toilet. And so all of the wood underneath the toilet had rotted out. So I had to replace that. And then the PVC piping and stuff was all like super corroded and old. So I had to replace, or it wasn't even PVC. I had to replace that with PVC, get a new toilet.
Galvanized. It was
Um,
galvanized.
what's that?
Galvanized is the stuff that gets corroded and old. You have to, yeah.
Yeah. So they had to replace that with fresh PVC and new flooring, new toilet, and everything like that. So that was like the other money I spent on it. But then after that, everything was good, and we were going to closing, and then the buyer says our final walkthrough on a Friday. We're supposed to close on Monday, and this is Good Friday, and so everyone's closed. And so I was like, that's awesome. You guys could have done this on any other day where people are open, in case, something happened, but they didn't. And so they did their final walkthrough, and another, just a just a word of advice to people. Realtors are always going to come back to you on the inspection, and they're always going to come back to you on final walkthrough. They're always going to try to nickel and dime you at the last second before closing every single time. And it's nothing against this realtor. They were pretty good to work with overall, but that's what they did. And so
Yeah,
they called me
part of the
on Friday,
process.
which what's that?
It's part of the process.
Yep. And that's why, we like wholesaling, work with wholesale buyers, professional buyers. Um, but yeah, so they called me as I was expecting on Friday, and I was like, "How's it going?" And she was like, "Oh, it's going." And I was like, "All right, well, just hit me with it." And she tells me the lights are flickering. And I was like, "Okay, well, you were just there 2 days ago, and the lights weren't flickering. So like, what's going on?" And the termite guy had just finished up that Monday, and there was no issues. He was inside the house too. And she was like, I don't know, but the lights are flickering, the breaker's cutting on and off. And I was like, okay, well, I doubt it. Can you send me like a video or something of the lights flickering, or the breaker box or something? No video was sent. And we both have iPhones. She could have FaceTimed me, but she didn't. And so I was like, okay, well, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, I'm not gonna like deduct my pricing more because the lights are flickering.
You've
So
already spent a lot of
anyways,
money at this point. That's a lot of money you've spent.
yeah, I already spent a lot of money. And so at this point, like, I was a little bit frustrated with that, to be honest. And I was like, really, like, you're calling me because the lights are flickering. Like, first of all, I don't believe you. And second of all, if they were flickering, just go reset the breaker and try it again. Like, it's not a big
Or
deal.
it could be a bad light bulb or a bad switch or something
Yeah.
really simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be a two-way switch. It could just be these light bulbs need to be changed, which they probably do. It could be wind in the area. This property's in the country. Like, it could be something like that. Anyways, it could be anything, but instead you're like putting this back on my plate. So I was like, okay. And so I'm calling, like, I just go on Google and I'm calling like one by one all these electricians. Everyone's closed because it's a Good Friday. So it's like awesome. And so then I go on Thumbtack and I found someone who's like, okay, I can come out there, but I can come out there Monday. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. And so finally I find someone to go out there the following day. And then in addition to that, I called Duke Energy and I was like, hey, like, are there any outages over here? Like, they're saying my lights are flicking. They're like, nope, all good. But they did say they'll send someone out to check the exterior, like the actual power lines and stuff for me, for free. So like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. And so anyways, so this dude goes out there the following day and FaceTimes me as the realtor could have done. And he's like, yeah, there's absolutely nothing going on here. All like he showed me like turn on every switch one by one. He's like, yep, nothing going on. He goes to the breaker box and he's like, yep, nothing's tripping off. And I was like, okay, cool. So anyways, I texted her back. I
Uh,
was like, what's that?
I just said, wow, it sounds like they're scamming you. It sounds like they're
Yeah.
just totally
Yeah. So
BSing.
So it was frustrating for me, like after that, because you have to pay people for their time,
Yeah.
So I had to pay this person, for a service
Oh,
call.
you could have made them pay, switch it back onto the buyer
Yeah,
side for that, for that
that was a good point.
house call.
Yeah. And so then I texted her and I was just like, hey, just stop by the property. Everything's working perfectly fine. Like, looking forward to closing on Monday because I was like, I'm not changing any of my thing for you. And so basically at this point, I was like, either one of two things are gonna happen. Like, she's gonna go back over there and say the same thing, and I know she's lying, or she's just going to close on Monday. And so I was like, okay. And so back in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm probably just going to have to go through this property, do a full flip, change out the floors, change out the carpet, fix up the kitchen a little bit, like do a full flip.
But you
So I was
have
like,
enough,
okay. And so,
you had enough margin to be able to do this stuff.
yeah, I mean, the termites sucked. That was $10,000. That was a huge expense, but
Yeah.
still had like a decent margin on this. I thought it was gonna be like a home run, but it was still a good profit deal. Like, we still made a bunch of money on it. But I'll share that in just a second. But But so I was just kind of expecting that in the back of my mind. I was like, if you're really gonna make a big deal about this, I'm not gonna budge on closing day. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a really bad taste. Even though it's kind of expected, I think that's just in bad taste to do that. And so I was like,
Yeah.
either you're gonna close at full price, or I'm just gonna flip this property. Like, I'm not going back and forth. And so on Monday, I followed up with the attorney. I was like, hey, we're all good to close today. And they were like, oh, all good. Like, buyers coming in later. And I was like, okay. And so I was just like, okay, pretty much either you're going to close or you're going to not. And so the realtor called me like 5 times and I was just like ignoring her calls. Like, whatever you're trying to BS, you're trying to pull, like, whatever, either you're closing the day or we're not. And like, I'll just move on. And so I like 4:30, 5 o'clock, the attorney finally emails and they're like, okay, we're all closed. And I was like, okay. And so we actually did close on Monday.
Nice.
But I wonder what would have happened if I answered her call. I assume it was some last minute request. And so I
Or it
didn't.
could have been, it could have been something about the closing or something with who knows?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's probably best that you just put a line in the sand at that point.
Yeah, I just ignored her and I just texted her. I was like, hey, like, I'm not talking right now. I'll just talk to you after we close, basically. But anyway, so I'll share all the numbers on this one, start to finish, in case anyone's interested. So I did get a lender on this property. Our purchase price on it was 179.9. That was our contract price, but with the lender fees and stuff, it was a bit more. And so I'll just share all the numbers. So contract price 179.9. I had to put a down payment, working with a lender of 24,978.43, so about $25,000 down. And then money that we put into the property, including the termites, including everything, was 19,000 and some change. So all in, including the down payment, about 45,000 into the property. We listed it for 279.9, and I think that was a little bit high. I probably could have went a bit aggressive at like 269.9. But anyways, I ended up accepting a lower offer because I just wanted to sell it quick anyways. And so we accepted at 265. They offered us 250. We got them at 265, and we accepted that. And then yeah, and then we had the concessions, we had the termites, we had a few more things we had to do. And overall, I'm trying to find my net sales price. I don't have that here. But the gross proceeds that I received, like the money I received at closing, was 84,000, but minus that 45. And so we made about 40,000 on the deal.
Nice. That's great.
In total. Yeah. And so yeah, so that was the deal. So still a great deal overall. I was hoping to make over 50 on it, or maybe even more, but with the termites and some other stuff, we didn't do that. But we still great profit deal. So we still were able to make 40,000 on it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And
yeah,
that's as Jasper said, some people call that a wholesale deal. Just you don't do much to it, but you did. I mean, you did a fair amount to it. You didn't expect to do the termite stuff and the
yeah,
vapor barrier and all those things. I mean, you
yeah,
didn't have to do the vapor barrier, but that's
yeah. But
probably
that's
less
something
than
that that's something that retail buyers expect, is that vapor barrier
yeah.
for whatever reason.
That's still a great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that you recognized it as a profit opportunity. Bigger profit opportunity than just wholesaling it.
Mhm.
What would you have made if you wholesaled it? Do you think?
That's a good question. Like as this was kind of progressing, I was like, man, I should have wholesale this deal. But in this one in particular, I never marketed it. Like as soon as we got it, I was like, this has a nice spread. We're just gonna buy it. And so I didn't even market it. Going back, I probably would have done that, at least so I know where I stand. But if I had to guess, like I said, our contract price was 180. The ARV on this property is probably like 320-ish. So I would guess we
Oh,
could have wholesaled it and made about the same exact amount without doing
wow.
anything. So that's why I pretty much don't buy properties. But yeah, if I had to guess, with those numbers, if I were to wholesale for 220, I think the ARV is about 320. They have 100K worth of spread. Probably needed I did a light flip at 20K. It probably needed 40 to 50 in total. So I
Yeah.
think I could have wholesaled around 220, 210 if I'm being conservative.
So
So it
you
was a
could have
fail.
made 30 or 40 on it.
So it was a fail overall. But I just wanted to share that with people.
Well, it was a learning experience, though,
Yeah, it was a
and
learning experience. But yeah, I mean, if I had to do it again, I would wholesale the deal because but
in hindsight, yeah.
yeah,
But you have the experience. You got it under your belt, and you made a good profit. And if you want to do another one, you kind of have a little bit more experience in that realm to do it again.
yeah. The good news is I met some good contractors. I now have a termite guy. I have a good plumber that fixed the toilet for me. Like I have all these people now, so that's good. So yeah, it was a
Yeah, and if
good.
you hadn't hit the termites and stuff, then you might have made 15K more. So
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
it's a little bit of bad luck, but you gave yourself enough of a margin to still come out of it in a really good way.
yeah,
That's awesome. It's a
yeah. It
great
was nice to see
breakdown.
them close. Yeah. Hmm.
All right. Anything else on your business side that you want to share before we switch over?
No, no, that's it. I know that was a long breakdown, so go ahead and switch
That's
it
a
over.
good breakdown, though. It's detail for anybody who's thinking about doing it. And I
Yeah,
know when I was starting doing deals, I really loved when people broke down a deal from beginning to end and I could see all the nuts and bolts and the process very clearly. So I think it's really valuable.
yeah,
Yeah. Cool. Well, as far as my business, we had a really good week this week. We closed 5 deals, I think. Let's see. I think we had
yeah.
5 closings, but it was 6 properties, I think is why I'm hesitating here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let me see here. I'm gonna just pull up my Podio really quickly so I can be accurate here, but 5 closings, but one of the closings was 2 vacant lots bundled into one. And, yeah, so we did 2, one in Pinehurst, North Carolina, one in Cameron, North Carolina, and then Jasper, we did the JV with you in Fayetteville, which I
Yep.
was thinking about doing what you're talking about there too in that condo. We chose to JV it and wholesale it, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was tempted to do what you just did. And then, we did another one in Spring Lake, North Carolina, and then, yeah, this was the 2 lots. So that's 1, 2 so we did 5 closings, and it was 6 properties this
That's
week.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them was bundled as 2, and one was a JV with Jasper that Jasper found us a buyer for because it was a condo, and we weren't getting good offers on it, and Jasper got an offer that allowed us to both make some money, so we just got it done,
Yeah.
and the buyer was great, closed really fast, so appreciate that, Jasper.
Yeah. Thank
Um,
you. That's
and
awesome.
obviously, it was fun to work together on a deal and get it closed, and, um, we don't get to do that haven't gotten to do that very often, maybe we'll do it more in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys found a new closing attorney.
Yeah, and that's another possible victory out of that, yeah, is
Yeah.
we worked with somebody you've been working with who did a great job, and it was really, yeah, really a positive experience all the way around.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the closings for contracts. I think we had a slow contract week this week. I'm looking at my Slack here. What was Yeah, this was the week of the 21st. So we only got one contract this week, it looks like, after 3 last week. So I think we're up to 10 on the month
That's
for
great.
contract. And, yeah, one of the things about the closings I was sharing with you offline, Jasper, is that we just exceeded our quarter one revenue in April. Like April's revenue, because we've had 9 closings in April, has, exceeded the revenue we made in the entire first quarter by quite a
Yeah.
bit.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah,
That's
I don't
like
know
what
how
we
much
were
I've shared. Say it again?
I was saying we shared it on a prior episode, I think, but that's what we were sharing about just real estate in general is that uh, a lot of times you'll make all of your income for the year within like 6 months, and you'll have 6 dry months, but you'll have 6 huge months. So that's awesome. That's kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, testament to
It was
that.
a really it's a relief for me because we were definitely feeling financial stress, in March after 3 slow months in a row, and then some of our March closings got pushed to April, which is part of why April was big, but 9 closings is our biggest month in a while. I mean, we looked at last year and our biggest number of closed deals last year was 8. So 9 is might be an all-time high, but I didn't look at prior years.
That's awesome.
Looked at last year. So yeah, it's pretty great and great to bounce back there.
Yeah.
And then what else in business KPIs? I'm sorry, I'm not 100% on top of it. I'll just stick with that for now. Uh, and I'll just go into a deal breakdown, then maybe I'll remember some other stuff.
Sounds good.
But I'll break down these lots because we closed 3 lots with 1 seller this week, and so it's a little bit of an interesting deal story. I was looking at the details of the deal. This guy came to us in March. I think it was from a text campaign, and he came to us in March, and then we got him under contract pretty quickly after that, and then he reached out and said he was thinking about changing his mind because he was having other offers for more. And so I got on the phone with him and talked with him, and he was pretty cool about it. He was just like, "Yeah, I want to get the most out of my properties that I have." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you signed a contract with us already," and went back and forth a little bit. But so what we ended up agreeing on is he was kind of dangling a carrot with these other 2 lots that he had. And so what I ended up doing is giving him we agreed on a 3 lot package where he would get more money for the second 2 lots than he was getting for the first lot, and we would increase the first lot slightly to make him feel better, but the
Hmm.
average of the 3 overall would make him feel like he was where he wanted to be. So we created a win-win situation where he got more average per property, he got a little bit more on the first one, and then, we gave him more on the other 2, but we ended up doing well on these 3 lots, and, and we closed them within yeah, within 30 days, less than 30 days. We sold them to 2 separate buyers, and, but through actually through a mutual buyer of ours, Jasper, who wholesaled on top of our wholesale to 2 buyers. So we closed
Oh
them all on the
man.
same day, but, they were 2 different buyers, and so we had a little bit of I mean, this deal wasn't simple in the end
Yeah.
because I'm making it sound real easy, but it's not always easy to have a conversation with a seller who says they're getting higher offers and they're thinking about changing their mind, right? So that's the first hurdle that we had,
Yeah.
and then we had a buyer come in. And then they took the first lot. And then when we got the second two lots, I went back to the same buyer and said, "Do you want the other two?" And they were mad because they were more expensive than the first one. And, we had to deal with all that. But
No.
then when it got down to closing, the closing attorney had got befuddled by three different lots with the same name, and we ran into a little bit of that. And then the buyer committed to one closing date, but then wanted to push it to another date, and we had to negotiate that back and forth because I had already promised the seller a date. We had a lot of that going back and forth. Like, we're going to close on a Friday, but then, oh no, we can't close until next Wednesday, and so then I had to renegotiate with the seller again because the buyers needed more time.
Yeah.
To go until the next Wednesday when I'd already told this guy. I already felt like I was on shaky ground because he had talked about other buyers and other offers. Then I got him to agree to 3 properties as a package and a closing date on a certain date. And then I had to go back to him again and say, "Oh, sorry about this. It's gonna be next week now." And
Yeah.
um, fortunately, the seller was very cool, and he was very happy once we renegotiated, and he felt like he was getting what he wanted out of the properties. And so he was pretty flexible about that. So that was a blessing, but it was not an easy call for me to make. And I first called our buyer and was like, "Dude, what's up? We said we were going to do this." So we had to, uh, yeah, it was challenging. It's more challenging than I'm making it sound. I'm glossing over it.
Yeah.
Point is, we got 3 closed and we ended up making a nice profit on them. We ended up making 26 on 3 lots, 26K.
That's
So
great.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. So I don't know if that deal is helpful at all, but you can message me. I don't
Oh,
know.
that's a
I feel like I'm not being clear about the process, but you can
that was a
message me
good
if you want more
breakdown.
details and I'll share more. But yeah,
And
big
it's
lot.
always that's impressive to get them all three closed on the same day with multiple buyers. That takes a lot of work. So
Yeah, and credit to our buyer who, like I said, wholesale the deal. He pulled the 2 buyers together and got stuff done. We just had the closing day thing of actually it didn't close on time. It closed 2 days. It closed, 3 days later than the first date and then 2 days later than the second date. So
oh yeah.
it was like, "Oh, this guy's wired his money, but this one hasn't. Well, where's the wire? Oh, it's coming later this afternoon. Oh, did the wire come? No, it didn't come. They're gonna wire it first thing in the morning. Oh, okay, thanks." And then, "Hey, did you get the wire?" When you reach out to the attorney, "Did you get the wire?" "No, we didn't get it yet." "Oh," and then you reach back to the buyer, "Is the wire coming?" "Oh,
Yeah.
it's coming. I don't know. It's coming soon." And then it was the end of the day, I think, by the time, and it was on Friday. So
Yeah.
it was Friday was the first closing date. Then it was Wednesday. Then it was pushed to Thursday because one of the buyers didn't send their wire. And then Thursday all day they didn't send it. And then Friday, finally it came in sometime in the middle of the day, and we finally closed under the wire on Friday,
Oh
a week
man.
later from the original date. So it
Yeah.
wasn't an easy one, but like I said, thankfully the seller had a lot of grace about it and was very cool about it. And he actually said he has some other properties that he wants to talk to me about next week. So
That's great.
that's a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So grateful for that. And like I said, the buyer did, I think he did his best, but it's tough to wrangle people um to do stuff like that, like you said. Get
Hmm.
2 different buyers to close on the same day on a package deal.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful, and like I said, it was instrumental in turning our business, really our business revenue around, because that was 3 lots that closed and a nice chunk of money coming in, and then we closed the other 2 deals. No, the other 3 deals. We closed 2 plus the JV with you. So good
Hmm.
week.
Yeah,
Good
that's
week.
great.
And then I guess we were going to touch on some challenges too. And one of the things was a broader picture thing. Um, there's a bill in the Senate in North Carolina that's proposing that all wholesalers will have to become licensed real estate agents in order to practice wholesaling in North Carolina. So there's been a lot of talk about that this past week or so, on threads and things. Jasper, you said people have been blowing you up about it. And
Yeah.
it's a major, it's kind of like outlawing wholesaling in a way, because if every wholesaler has to get a real estate license in order to do business, that's going to really shake things up
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. So we just thought we'd touch on it briefly. I know this is not a North Carolina podcast, so we don't want to go too deep into it, but I think the reason it's good to check in about it is, one, from the perspective of running a business. which is one of the things we talk about here. And almost every year in my business, there's been something that's come in and shaken things up, right? We had
Mhm.
our SMS account go down for multiple months one year, and this is a similar type of thing where this is coming in. It could totally shake everything up, and you have to be able to roll with the punches and adapt and you know change your strategies sometimes in order to continue on with business. So,
Yeah,
Jasper, you were saying that you thought maybe some people are already heading for the hills or changing direction or going into a different career, a different job. And I think that happens when shakeups like this happen, right?
yeah,
We've seen it with when the real estate market sort of crashed in 2008, 2009. A lot of people got out of the real estate business altogether. They're just like, this is not for me. I'm done. But the
yeah,
people who stayed in, did really well. So I think from that perspective, and then the other perspective on it is that what are there 4 or 5 states now in the United States who have passed similar regulations where you have to be licensed in order to wholesale? And so it could be a national trend in the United States.
mhm,
So even if it's not affecting your state right now, it's something to keep on your radar that
yeah,
may be coming your way, or maybe even instituted nationwide, right? And
yeah,
so for me, the things that come up are just like to become a licensed real estate agent, and I've been a licensed real estate agent in California, and I've audited the course here in North Carolina. And Jasper, you did sort of an introduction to the course in North Carolina and decided you didn't want to do it, but
yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot to do, and I know real estate agents are going to say, "Oh, poor wholesalers, they have to take a test and get a license and stuff." But it's 75 hours of coursework, and then it's a lot of hours of study. You have to really dig down because it's a 2-inch thick book that you kind of have to master. And it's whatever a two-hour exam with a couple hundred questions on it with I think a 66% pass rate. So even if all the wholesalers decided to get their license and do their due diligence, 60 to 70% of them are going to actually pass the test the first time. And then
yeah,
if you get your license, then you have to work underneath a broker for at least 2 years before you can become a standalone broker. And you have to give them a percentage of your whatever you're making, on deals, which if you're running a business like Jasper and I are with 6 or 8 or 10 team members, and then you have to give away a portion of your profit, it puts a crimp in your hose for sure.
yeah,
And, there are other implications that I see as far as how it's going to affect associated professions because we bring a ton of revenue as wholesalers to people like closing attorneys and, a lot of the subcontractors we use, mobile notaries and people who do soil scientists in the land space or surveyors. People take photos, people do home inspections, handymen who do repairs. And that's not even to mention the flippers and the builders who rely on us for deals. And, not only that, but we do have a lot of real estate agents that we work with who make money because of their association with us. So even if realtors are trying to target wholesalers and take us down, and I'm not saying that's what's happening, but they might be, some of the realtors are going to be hurt by that too. So,
yeah,
I mean, those are some of my general thoughts about it. I think that the other thing I would say, and I'll turn it over to you, Jasper, for your thoughts, but is just like real estate is hard whether you have a real estate license or don't have a real estate license. And the people who succeed and sustain in the business are people who are professional and ethical, whether they're wholesalers or real estate agents. And I think there's a perception that wholesalers are unethical, and I think a few bad apples have spoiled it for the rest of the wholesalers. But most wholesalers who are sticking with it for a longer period of time have built up a solid business, operate ethically, operate professionally, have built, a buyer list and all these things. And there's a huge attrition rate with realtors and with wholesalers. Realtors, like 75 or 80% of people fall out in the first few years. Same thing with wholesaling, right? So it's hard either way you go. And wholesalers are not unprofessional because they don't get a real estate license. They are professional if they're sticking with the business. And
yeah.
I don't think slapping a real estate license on a wholesaler is going to change that much or forcing us to do that. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good discussion. I mean, I don't have anything really positive to say about the bill and stuff, but I don't need to complain about that. But I mean, as far as action that people can take, there's, like you said, there's the majority of the country is still open, for wholesaling right now. It does seem like that this is being pushed by the Realtors Association. Doesn't seem like it. It's definitely what's happening, but they're going to try to ban it nationwide. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I think also on the opposing side of things, I know that Jerry Norton, Pace Mortgage, Damage, all the big names in our space are trying to form a national wholesale association to be the opposite end of the spectrum. And so, hopefully that'll happen. And I would definitely support them if they do that. But for the time being, you can definitely virtually wholesale anywhere in America that is not illegalized. I think it's like 5 or 6 states right now that are pushing to legalize it. And every state is different. And so I've only read into this a little bit and done some research on ChatGPT, but every state that has passed this law has done it a little bit differently. And so it sounds like to me, West Virginia and South Carolina are the most like intense, and Pennsylvania. Those three are the most intense, where they're just like completely banning all wholesaling actions. It sounds like North Carolina is trying to put us under the realtor umbrella so that they can control us then. It sounds like that's their approach. Um, and so, yeah, but I mean, what can other people do right now? I mean, first of all, in those states, if you can find a way to continue to do business, like we said, I think a lot of people are going to be leaving those states. So if you can find a way to either get licensed, or maybe there's another way to around it, maybe doing double closings or just doing flips yourself, you could probably there will probably be more opportunity in those states. Is my point.
Commercial is another one too. There's no language about commercial in the bill at this point. It's all
Yeah,
residential. It
yeah,
says it defines residential property wholesaling to include soliciting homeowners for purchase contracts of their property unless it will be used as a soliciting party's residence, which is very, very strict, which means even builders or flippers cannot directly contact any homeowner unless they're going through a realtor, because
yeah,
unless it's your primary residence, you can't contact. So it basically does away with all the marketing that we're doing or anybody's
yeah,
doing. And so the only way you'd be able to market, because technically a loophole that people are seeing right now is that it only says residential property. So you could switch your operation to commercial, but that's a whole learning curve, right?
yeah,
And even if you were to do double closings, you couldn't market for the properties legally. Uh,
yeah,
so you'd have to buy your leads from somebody else, but they would have to be illegally marketing for leads. So, it's kind of a slippery slope there.
yeah, yeah. And so I
You
mean,
would basically only be able to buy on-market properties from realtors. So basically, the realtors are trying to control all the entire flow of properties being sold.
yeah. And so, I mean, you pretty much explained it. I mean, it's if we're putting like on our, I don't know, if we're putting on a different hat and we're trying to like fight it or something, I think it's unconstitutional. There is something in our constitution that says that states can't interfere with contract law, because it's our right as Americans to go under contract with other Americans and do business with
Yeah.
each other. And so that is in the Constitution, but I did, do some research and ChatGPT, and they pretty much say that states can do whatever they want because who's going to really stop them? When the lobbying organizations are the ones running the state and the government, anyways. And so, it's frustrating for me, but it's just that I can go down a rant for 20 minutes, but it's not going to solve anything. So I think the main thing is, I mean, if they stop us from marketing, they can't stop you from like branding yourself. And so I think people that have put out a brand, and I don't think they could ever stop you from like posting on social media about your brand or stuff like that. So
Right.
I think the big companies are going to benefit from this. Companies like Home Investors, the We Buy Ugly Houses people that people know already. I think companies like that are going to, see a huge influx of leads, because they can stop us from marketing, maybe, if they pass the thing, but they can't stop sellers from reaching out to us. So if sellers are filling out your information online, or calling you because they know of you or something, they can't stop that. They might be able to stop like cold calling and texting and stuff.
Yeah. So you're talking about inbound marketing and SEO and things like that
Yeah,
to get business. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think they'll ever be able to stop that. So it might be shifting to those channels, which are more expensive, but like I don't think they could ever stop you from advertising on TV. Like that's another thing I don't think it could stop. So like stuff like that, I don't think would be able to.
It's funny that you say the home investors and we buy houses, because it's called the we buy houses bill, right? Isn't that in the language of
Yeah,
the bill?
yeah,
I was just reading it. It's something in the language of the bill is like it's the we buy houses bill. So are they
yeah,
targeting home investors and New Western first, and then our smaller businesses after that? I don't know. But when you
probably.
say the
Yeah,
unconstitutional thing too, it really is like, and I won't harp on this because I mentioned it at the top, but we're small businesses. That's what America is built on, small business, right? And they're trying to shut down small businesses. And when you talk about, I'll just say one thing about ethics too, is like there are unethical real estate agents and people without integrity with real estate licenses just as
Yeah,
well as there are wholesalers in the same boat, right? It's not the profession, it's the demographic. There are bad apples in every profession. So
yeah,
just say that, because a lot of people that we deal with as wholesalers are like, I hate real estate agents. I've had a bad experience with them. I want to do, a cash sale with somebody else. And so
yeah.
it's not just one sided. And
And
I don't
like,
want to totally make this a two-sided thing, but it feels that way a little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're on one side of the fence, and we think it's the right side, or I think it's the right side. I'll speak for myself, but realtors think that we're all bad, and so that's fine. That's their right. Everyone has a right to have an opinion. But one
And
thing that
not
I've
every
noticed,
realtor, let's just, not every realtor thinks wholesalers are bad, because we partner with a lot of
yeah,
realtors and do great deals and great work with them. But it seems like a
yeah,
majority of realtors perceive our industry as bad or evil or unethical, things like that.
yeah, it seems like at least the higher up, whoever is running this commission or whatever, seems like that. But just from the data, like you shared, I'll wrap it soon, but um a lot of like I just want to echo your points because like this week I mentioned we got all those online leads, and the nice thing about pay per lead is you can refund the leads if they're not legit. But we got like, I don't know, probably 10 leads that are listed on the market, and what that tells me is that these realtors are not doing their job. They're not serving these sellers.
Right.
So like I don't want to attack real estate agents, but it's just like what you said. It's like there's a reason that wholesalers exist, and there's a reason that I'm getting these leads in my business that are on the market because the realtors are not selling their houses. And
Yeah.
so it's like, I don't know, it's just frustrating for me to see someone try to monopolize an industry when that's what America is against as a country. So it's kind of
And
weird.
then they control the market. So that's when, yeah, it's like you said,
It's a
it's a
monopoly.
monopoly. And
Yeah.
then you
And
can just
then
be lazy, because I
yeah,
was a licensed real estate agent, and there are plenty of agents who are listing agents. And so what they're doing is they're going out and getting listings, and they're just sitting, and
yeah, they just sit on
they're
the
not
market.
doing any work. They're
Yeah.
just get the listing, and then the sellers have this experience of, man, my property's been on the market 90 days. What's going on? And then the unethical piece of that is getting the listing at too high of a price and just waiting for the sellers to get frustrated so that you get price reduction, price reduction, price reduction, and you
Yeah.
have them under contract for 6 months, so they can't go anywhere. They just have to, anyway.
Yeah.
That's more of a rant. Sorry.
No, I mean it's just interesting because there's also a huge lawsuit right now going on against Google, and it's because the government, federal government, is suing Google because they think they monopolize internet. They think they have too much of a hold on search, on ads, on all that stuff. And now the real estate agent commission is doing the exact same thing to the real estate industry. They're trying to monopolize it. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, obviously, it makes sense if you're a real estate agent because, like you said, they're going to get 100% of the business. But it's frustrating to see them doing that when they're going after Google for the exact same thing. So it's kind of just weird to see that. So,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
good point.
but yeah. But I mean, we'll
Well,
wrap it there. I mean, I don't know if that's helpful for anyone, but basically the point is, do good ethical business and you'll always have a place, whether it's real estate or another business. But I don't want to discourage people from getting into wholesaling. Like I don't want it to be that because there's still a huge country out there. And if America does ban it, I'm sure you can probably do it overseas. So there's always that.
yeah, and let's just end with a few action steps too, because like you said, you can you can pivot, you can go into other states, and there are 40 odd states that you can still do wholesaling in at this point. And who
Mhm.
knows if other states will ever outlaw it. And we don't know that this bill will be passed in North Carolina. I mean, it's still on the table and it's still
Yeah.
under review, and it could be passed in a modified form, or it could be not passed at all, or it could be tabled until another session, whatever. But if it
Hmm.
is passed, it gets goes into action in goes into effect in October of 2025. So you can go into other states, you can change your business model, but the marketing thing kind of puts a crimp in that. Um, and I mean, what other options are there, right? I mean, you go into other states, get a license is the other option. You can get
Yeah.
licensed, and then as far as what you can do right now is you can speak up, you can rally people, you can write to your congress people. It's pretty easy. I can put that stuff in the show notes to find your congressperson and just send them an email or a letter and just say, hey, I'm against this bill H797. I'm a professional. I do this. I run a business, and this is why I'm against it, or whatever. You can keep it brief. But the more that legislators hear voices in opposition, the more they're going to second guess actually voting in favor of this. And then even potentially, if they can't shoot it down, even modifying the language so it's not as strict or something. So that's
Yeah.
another action you can take. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most important. I think that's why we included this is kind of just to raise awareness. Because if you're listening to this, thank you for listening to us, but also, you're interested in real estate investing and wholesaling, probably in particular. And so the more that we can, speak up against it, the more that we can continue having this awesome business, which is it's a great business, and it's changed my life. So
Yeah.
I would recommend, yeah, definitely speaking up like what you just said, and then also Jerry Norton, follow him on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and just show your support for him because they are working on that. They obviously, most of those people live here in Arizona, and so they're starting with Arizona, but they do want to make a national wholesalers association. And I think that's the only way we can really fight this, So I would just show your support to those guys, publicly online, and hopefully that they'll, see that and push it out faster. So
Or if you're an activist, start a wholesalers association of North Carolina and let us know, and we'll join you.
yeah, that's
Because
true.
maybe
Yeah.
that's what we need to do is,
Yeah.
start that and
Yeah.
then have it be associated with Jerry Norton and those guys. Like if every state started one and then we all associate them all together, probably if you're going to do something like what those guys are doing in Arizona, you're going to need somebody to spearhead it in each state so that you can build a momentum and then join as a national organization.
Yeah, definitely.
But that is a way to combat it. So it's a great point. All right. Well, let's wrap this up because we didn't want to spend too much time on this.
Yeah.
So I guess we're coming down the home stretch here. And as far as tools and tips, I guess we mentioned some stuff. We mentioned some platforms. We'll just summarize that. We talked about Skipify, Direct Skip, List Source, PropWire, and PropStream for list pulling. Um, and Jasper talked about Home Jab. If you want professional photos and you're doing a home or a flip, that's a nice way to go. We talked about Thumbtack is a good way to find handy people. If you need somebody quickly, sometimes you can use Thumbtack. I also use Yelp for that. When we're trying to find somebody to do an odd job for a property, sometimes you can post it on Yelp and you'll get multiple people responding to you pretty quickly on that. And then what else? Any other tools or things we mentioned that I didn't hit?
I think it's everything we mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then we are going to do any inspiration and education for the week. Do you have anything you've been reading or listening to, Jasper, that you want to share?
Uh, yeah, I've still been reading that book. I think I shared last week. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. I've been really enjoying that one. He's just talking about it's kind of just like a biography, but sprinkled in with a bunch of good nuggets and stuff. So he's been just talking about his journey coming up in New York as a restaurant person. And so he started as a busboy, as most people do, and then he kind of worked his way up. And right now, he was a recent chapter I read. He was talking about how he kind of did an overhaul on the restaurant side of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So that's been really cool to read about.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And so he said this was in like the early 2000s, but he said they did a huge renovation on the property, $450 million renovation. So
Wow.
that's inspiring. Talk about, raising money and bringing people together. But so they did that. And then they wanted to do a complete overhaul in the restaurant thing. And they hired him to be like the manager of it. So that was really cool to read about. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of good takeaways from that. But basically, his main takeaway from the book, and so far is just to take care of your people first. And you take care of your people really well, and they'll automatically just take care of your clients better. And a lot of people kind of do the reverse where they're like, clients first, the customer's always right. We've always heard those sayings and stuff, but he just kind of flips it on its head and he's just like, focus on the people that work for you and they'll take care of everyone that they work with it as an extension. So I really like that. And it's definitely a
Yeah.
good reminder. So,
And good service is one of the best marketing tools you can have,
yeah.
providing good service and a good customer experience, one of the best marketing tools.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I know I've watched and listened to a bunch of stuff this week, but I can't remember it because my head's still a little bit in that last conversation. So on my bedside, I still have multipliers. I'm reading a little bit of that every day. It's a very thick book, so I'm not all the way through it, but it's a similar thing, really similar but different. It's just talking about how to motivate people from a growth standpoint and recognize people's gifts and strengths and accentuate them and be a different type of leader than maybe a lot of people have experienced leadership from, especially in a corporate setting or a business setting where you're empowering people to be decision makers and leaders and lifting them up so that they, similar to what you were just saying, can carry your business rather than
Yeah.
you like micromanaging and leading from that place. So yeah, I guess that's it. Time to wrap it up. If you liked this podcast and want to hear more content, please let us know what you want to hear more of in the comments and ask us questions, and also subscribe, like and subscribe. And we're on iTunes and Spotify as well, so you can find us there. And we'll post all of our contact information and social media in the description of this podcast if you want to reach out to us. We're always happy to answer questions or offer resources or anything. We like to talk about this business and
Yeah.
help others to grow. So anything else? Any last words, Jasper?
No, that's it.
All right. Have a great week, everyone.